Welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast with your hosts, Tony Caselnova from DisneyByTheNumbers.com and Parkhopper John from WDWParkhoppers.com. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast at all times. And get ready for the Disney Parks Podcast.
Have you ever come to Orlando and you're the person that has to make all the dining plans, all the fast passes, get all the tickets? Well, we have a service that can help you do this. This is the best service. They are themeparkconcierge.com. You can call them up at 407-257-9973. Tell them your plans. They'll send you a little profile, get some information about you and your traveling party and what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And then they can set up a custom plan for you. And they'll take you around the parks. They'll make the dining plans. They'll get the fast passes. They'll take you to Walt Disney World. They'll take you to Universal. They'll take you to Busch Gardens, to SeaWorld, to Legoland, to all of those places. And they will do all of the work for you. Contact them at themeparkconcierge.com. Check them out on Facebook at facebook.com/Ramon VIP Concierge, or email them at ramon@themeparkconcierge.com. I am telling you, you will not be disappointed. And if you tell them the Disney Parks Podcast sent you, you'll get 10% off your order.
When a story of Peter Pan came out many years ago, a little pixie named TinkerBell was introduced to the world. And today on the Disney Parks Podcast, we have the pleasure of introducing to you the reference model for TinkerBell for the movie Peter Pan that Walt Disney created back in 1953. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret, Kerry, welcome to the show.
What a lovely introduction. Now, no one knows what a reference model is, so we'll have to get right into it so that they will understand that little men in white coats do not take me away when somebody says she's Tinkerbell.
Yeah, so tell us, Margaret, what a reference model is, and then how that started for you. You know, what was the knock on the door saying, "Hey, can you be the reference model for Tinkerbell?"
Well, let's take those and split those
right,
up.
Sure.
The first, I think a lot of people have sort of an idea of what a reference model is. However, when I am introduced, there's always somebody who said, "I loved watching you come down the line from the Matterhorn at Disneyland." You know, and I look at them and I say, "Do I look crazy?" So that's what I did was just so unique and so different that they use it all the time now, and used it before they announced it to the world, because Disney didn't want a lot of people knowing that they used human beings as reference models for their characters. And what they would have us do is get into a costume. I wore a one-piece bathing suit that was close enough for them, and step out in front of a 35-millimeter film camera with a crew, with the lights, with everything, and perform whatever the scene is in pantomime. And then they would take that film and they would give it to the animators, who would then draw the character just like the reference model. So when I stepped out in front of the camera the first time, I said to Mark Davis, the man who designed TinkerBell and, of course, almost everything else wonderful at Disney and Disneyland, I said, "Mr. Davis," those were the days when you call them Mr. Davis, what would you like me to be? Do you want her to be ditzy like Betty Boop? Do you want her to be above it all like Queen of the Fairies? And he said, "Margaret, we want her to be you." And I said, "Gosh, I think I could do that." So I went out and did the first scene, which was the one where she lands on the mirror in the nursery, the mirror that was on top of the dresser. And then she looks at herself for the first time and sees how pretty she is until she sees the size of her hips. And she gets very upset and marches off. So that is a reference model. Secondly, why do they have them? Well, if you have 12 different animators that are working on one character throughout a whole movie, the character has to look the same throughout the whole movie. And if you have 12 animators who have a little bit of a different idea of how this hand movement or that hand or this walk or whatever, you can see that it doesn't match. So that was one of the reasons. The other is that these dear animators, I mean, they can't, well, Mark Davis, wonderful man's man. Does he really know how a little lady would turn around and look over her shoulder? Probably, but why should he work at it? So they hired me to look over my shoulder. And so therefore, I can say, I am TinkerBell.
Wow. I get goosebumps when you say that. I really do. I really do.
Now, would you like me to take the second part of that question?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Well, I caused the Depression. I was born in 1929, and everything went right downhill from there. And so my adopted parents put me in the movies. I could make $8.50 a day. I mean, that was big money back in the Depression. So I've been working 84 years at this business and loving it. I'm just having the best time, particularly because of TinkerBell and the Andy Griffith Show and the Lone Ranger and a couple of those things. But how did I get it? Well, I had gone into television when it was still experimental, loved it. And I had just finished a big show at ABC, which, by the way, we called the Almost Broadcasting Company in those days because it was the baby network. Anyway, and I had landed an assistant dance director job over at Fox on a big movie. Got a call from my agent because by that time, of course, I had one. And she said, get over to Disney tomorrow, and they are interviewing for a 3.5-inch sprite to who doesn't talk. And I said, Disney? Oh, I saw stars in my eyes and all around me. Anybody who got invited to interview at Disney felt that way. So over I went, and I interviewed for them, and I did some of my pantomime, and I did do the first scene that they asked me, the one looking at the mirror. Many years later, Mark told me, he said, one of the things that interested him was that I looked down past the floor, which was where the mirror was supposedly, and then back up. And he knew that I could do pantomime then. And that's what they said, would it be convenient for you to come to work next Tuesday? And that's how I landed the job.
Wow. That, it happens so quickly, I guess. And to get that opportunity, how do you say no to when the Disney company comes a knocking?
Oh, you don't. You knock on their door. It's the second happiest place on earth, as far as I am concerned. The studio. And now the first happiest place, of course, is Disneyland, but the second one is the studio. You go over there, I get a different feeling when I walk through the gates, and I see the smiling faces, and they're riding bicycles, and then the plants, many of them are trimmed to look like Mickey and Minnie, and it's just a wonderful place. I have worked at, I think, every studio in Hollywood, and no place has the feeling of, come on in, we're happy to see you. Warner Brothers, for example, the first studio that I worked at when I was 4 in Our Gang Comedies, there's a picture of me in my book as a fairy in Midsummer Night's Dream. I got sent this by McQueen, who is the editor, who redid the film, remastered the film, and he sent it to me, and there I am standing, 4 years of age, as a fairy, all in white. But I tell you, Warner Brothers, and I think it still is, you walk in the gates, and it's like, all right, if you behave yourself, we'll let you come visiting, but mind your manners. And you walk into Disney's lot, and it's, oh, come on in, we've been waiting for you.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is. It's an amazing place.
So during the process, when you were actually being the reference model, what was it like working with Mark Davis and the other animators? Did you have a lot of interaction with them? And what were they
right
like?
There. They were right there on the stage. Well, what it was that they would call me up and say, "We have a new scene that we would like to do. How is your schedule?" Because at that time, I was doing the Charlie Ruggles Show, which was a network show for ABC. I was also doing my own television show live at Channel 13. Well, both of those were live. And then I was doing some radio at the same time. So what they would do was find out whether I had a day or two that I could give them. And I would say yes, I would tell them. Then they'd say, "What time would you like to come?" And I would say coyly, 9:30. And they would say, "Fine. Be in hairdressing at 9:30, and they would fix my hair up in a bun on the top. There are pictures of me in my book, TinkerBell Talks and Tales of a Pixie Dusted Life, of me in my one-piece bathing suit with my hair done up on the stage. It's really cunning. I'm lucky that the archives at Disney let me have those few photos. I'm just so pleased they were so cooperative. Anyway, back to that. So then I was in my one-piece bathing suit. I put a cover up, walked over to they only had one sound stage then. That's how long ago it was. Wow. How about that? So that's how I met Walt Disney, but that's another story. Anyway, then you walk out, and the whole crew is there. The big camera's there. All the lights up on the catwalk. Everything is there. And and Mark Davis was usually there, or we met him on the way. And he would sit in the chair and show me all the sketches that he had done with the scene that was coming up. Jerry Geronimi was an Uber director overall, with two directors that actually directed the whole movie. And he was always there. He was a bouncy Italian. Anyway, he would show me, yes, that's what they wanted. Sometimes I had props. Sometimes I didn't. The first time I think I didn't. I just had two little sticks to show me where they wanted me to stand. And I went out and rehearsed it. And that's when I said to him, what do you want her to be? We want her to be you. Well, here's an interesting thing that you may not know, because, our civilization has changed so dramatically. I played her as if she were a 9 to 11-year-old little girl. Mm. And I played that scene on the mirror as if she had never seen a mirror before. I thought, why would they have a mirror in Neverland? So I played it like, oh dear, that's me. Oh, I like that. Oh, and then upset at the hips. Well, nowadays they say she's preening herself, she's doing whatever. No, she's not. She's seeing herself for the first time. But in today's world, that's the way they see it. She's showing off. She's preening herself. Okay, she's still adorable. So then I would go out and I would rehearse something. I'd try something. And usually they would say, we like that. So they would say, are you ready, everyone? And I would do the scene. Then say, let's take 2 for protection. I'd do it again. And then we would go on to the next scene. And that's how we would do it.
Wow. That's fascinating to me, because she's so iconic, TinkerBell. And you would think that they would have so much more input when they said we just want her to be you. And you instinctively did these things, all these little, and for a Disney fan like me, who, watches them and is fascinated by every move she makes, that is so quintessential TinkerBell. I actually feel like I know you better, because that's you. That's not TinkerBell. I mean, it is TinkerBell, but it's really you.
Yeah.
It is. And if I may add a little story to it,
sure.
There was a myth all around it that started because somebody mentioned, some Disney person on the radio back east mentioned that she had the curves like Marilyn Monroe. Someone picked up that story and put down that she was the reference model. Well, it's a great story. I mean, it makes sense. Marilyn was wonderful. I worked with her. I adored her. She could do anything as far as I was concerned, except for this, because if you really look at the scenes with TinkerBell, look how she's walking. She rolls her feet from the heel to the toe. Her hands are out. It's a ballet dancer's walk. Her movements are all ballet. And that's what I gave her, because she's light and airy like a ballerina. And, of course, I was a dancer since I was 4. I still tap dance on the stage at 87 years of age. I finished my 1-hour show tap dancing. So I was a dancer. Marilyn was not. Later on, when she did, How to Marry a Millionaire, they gave her the moves. And as I say, Marilyn could do anything as far as I was concerned. And in my book, I tell about the time I was working with her, and it was way back when. And I suddenly said, when we were chatting, I said, my Brownie camera, Marilyn, finally has some film in it. My little Brownie camera. And I said, could I take a picture of you? And she said, only if I could take a snapshot of you. And there are our 2 pictures that we took of each other working together. That's in the middle of my book in part 4. Yeah. So that's why Marilyn would never even try out for it she never did as far as I know, because that's not what she did. Unless you are a dancer, and I must say, a ballet dancer, not a tap dancer. They're sort of, heavier on their feet, lovely, beautiful. I didn't say, because I love tap dancing. You've probably seen my big clip that's all over YouTube from the Eddie Cantor movie, where I tap dance on top of a table with my partner. Mm-hmm. I was really an outstanding dancer. So, but the ballet, look at her hands when she moves it. Those are ballet moves. So that's a little trick. Watch it. You'll enjoy it more.
Yeah. Did you get any chance, everybody loves to hear a good story about Walt Disney himself, but was he on the set? Did he ever come and interact with, Mark and yourself?
Yep, but not about TinkerBell. In my book, once again, I have to say it because I'm so thrilled to get these rare pictures. We have a picture of Buddy Ebsen and Walt Disney and some other people, and they're over on the wall of the soundstage working out, what is it called? How big the human being and how small the character. What is that? Registration. There we go. Okay. And they came over several times because there's only one soundstage. So about 40 feet away from where we were working, in they would come, and they would work over on the wall, and you see Mr. Disney and Buddy Ebsen there. Then they would complete what they were doing, and Mr. Disney would come over to say hello to Mark to see what was going on, and to Jerry Geronimi, the cameraman, and to little old me. I was invited in the conversations. So it happened about 4 or 5 times, and it was delightful. He was much slimmer than I thought he would be, but I have to tell you something. When I talked to him, I was tongue-tied the first 2 times. Now, you can tell because I'm a talker, but I was tongue-tied, but not because it was Walt Disney. See, I was brought up in the time when everything had to revolve around the studio boss. He was God, absolute God. Louis B. Mayer, if he were within 2 sound stages away from us, we knew it. We never saw him, but we knew he was there. It's sort of like the president, in the same town. Right. And when I was at Fox, Georgie Jessel walked in. Surprisingly, he wanted to show some people the beautiful big dance number we were doing. Everything stopped. And the lady behind me, the dancer, tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, if he walks by us, should we curtsy? And that was the feeling that you had about the studio bosses. And here, a studio boss was walking over, chatting with Mark Davis and with me. It was about the 3rd time that he came over that I suddenly realized not only is he the studio boss, he's Walt Disney. I mean, that's how ingrained it was. So I'm glad he came back a couple of times.
Wow. So was it like that at other studios as well? Like when you went to Warner Brothers,
Oh my!
you could sense that
you never saw you. You could have the Warner Brothers, walking in the back of the soundstage if you were doing an action scene, and never recognize it because you never saw him.
Mm.
It was just the way they were. Was sort of like TV executives.
Mm-hmm.
They were back in New York,
right?
Yeah.
And we were doing TV out here. You never saw them,
right?
They were this name on the door way back where, and then and if you did meet them, you wouldn't know what to say or what to do. But I did tell, I think it was Jerry Geronimi, the director, at one time, just chatting with him, I said, I went to school with the Disney girls, Monticello School for Girls. Oh, there's a wonderful story about that in my book. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. Diane was a little older and Sharon was a little younger, but there were only 11 girls in each class. So, I got to know them. Well, the next time that Walt Disney came over, he looked at me and he said, I understand you went to school with my daughters. Well, I didn't expect that. So very cleverly, I said, yes, Monticello School for Girls. And he said, and that was it. I didn't know what to say, and he stepped maybe one step away and came back. He said, I'm sure, I think they must have liked you. Something nice like that.
Right.
I must tell you, I never saw him smoke. Maybe that was the rule inside a sound stage. That could have been. But it was a thrill, I tell you.
Let me ask you this, because I've never really. You're one of the few people from. And forgive me for saying it this way, because I don't mean it in a negative way, but you're one of the few people from that era that I've actually had contact with that knew Walt Disney. Could you explain to the people who listen to this show what it was like in that time in Hollywood? And could you explain what Walt Disney was? Because everything we know from Walt, we've read in books and heard stories. Could you explain from, first person experience, what was Walt Disney to Hollywood, and especially in that time, just the magnitude of who Walt Disney was? Well,
I think of him as an anomaly, because of how the studio was run. And it still is. You go over to the studio, and there's Lasseter walking down the street in his loud shirt, and you walk up to him and start chatting. And he'll chat with you. And you go over to the commissary, and everybody's sort of eating together. They have a huge dining room in the rotunda, which is so formal that I don't think anybody really likes to go there. So it's camaraderie with the big smiles, with all the rest. And he was very approachable. Let me tell you a story. This is one of my favorites. The cover of my book, I'm sorry I keep going back to my book, but it sort of reminds me of different stories. The cover of my book was done by Ron Diaz. Ron worked with Ivan Earle. He did all those odd and wonderful backgrounds of Sleeping Beauty, and he was known as a designer. In fact, there is a big, what is the display, I guess is the word, up at the Family Museum that's just starting next week. The work of Ivan Earle, a great artist. And Ron did the cover, and he did lithography for Disneyland, et cetera, et cetera. So quickly, I will tell you his story. He was born in Hawaii. He's Portuguese descent, a lot of Portuguese there. And his teacher sent in a painting that he did to see in a contest for the stamps of the United States, if they were chosen with this contest. He was chosen. He was 17 at the time. So he boldly at 17 wrote to Disney Studios and said, I was chosen, here's my work, do you want to hire me? And Disney Studios said yes. And so he came over to Los Angeles, not knowing anyone, I guess. I don't know whether they were at they were at the new Burbank Studios, because that's part of the story. So anyway, he comes over and he becomes an assistant quickly of Ivan Earl, which was big time stuff, I will tell you. Eyebrows went up. So he's still trying to learn the ropes. Even getting around in Los Angeles was really odd to him. So he's on the third floor. He had just come out of the office, and he looks up, and here's Walt Disney walking towards him from his office. And he said, Margaret, what flashed through my mind was, what do I say? You know, good morning, Mr. Disney? Oh, that doesn't sound right. Hi, Walt? No, that doesn't sound right. I don't know what. And by that time, Walt Disney was next to him and looked at him and said, hi, Ron, how's it going? And he said, he knew my name. And I chatted, and I said, fine, you know something, and we stopped for just momentarily, but I couldn't get over. I'm a new assistant there, and he knew my name.
Wow.
Does that give you a little idea of the way that place was run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the creativity is so amazing. And I have several friends who started out as animators, and then they found out that they were so good they went over to storymen, and then they did that so well that it was that kind of a place.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on the Burbank studio lot, and I can tell you, when I first walked through the gates, I got chills because
yes, I still do.
To be in places that Walt had stood, that Roy. I mean, I've seen the iconic pictures, and to walk the animation halls, it's just I'm getting chills now just talking about it.
I can understand.
It's a very
there's nothing that's more
place.
fun as I drive up and I say, I give my, because my married name is Wilcox, and I married a wonderful man whom I lost, so it's Wilcox, and I show my license, to come in,
right.
And the guard looks at me and he says, "No, you're not. You're TinkerBell. Park right over there." I tell you, it makes my month.
I'm sure.
Well, here's one for you, a story that I haven't told to anyone over the air. I got a call from Howard Green, who is publicity and communications vice president, Pixar, and for Disney for many years. Just the dearest man that God ever put on the face of the earth. In fact, I have his picture in my book. There I go with my book again. But anyway, this man called me and he said, Don Hahn, the producer, and Pete Docter, the producer, want to have lunch with you and want to have a meeting with you. And this happened last year, I guess. And I said, me? Why me? Well, I said, they're writing a book and they think that you could give some inside information. I said, you think I've got to turn that down? So we set it up, and over I came, and I sat down with these wonderful people. We had lunch, which I hate to do. I hate luncheon meetings. Oh, lousy. I'm famous for I don't eat at lunch. Anyway, I'm sitting next to Pete Docter, and he's telling me, and I look at him and I think, I know this man. He says, you're probably thinking of me as Woody in Toy Story. I drew Woody looking just like me. And I said, you are. And he's from Minnesota, and my girls live in northern Minnesota. So we had lots of things to talk about. And I've known Don Hahn for years. So, the chat was going back and forth. So we had the meeting, and they wanted to sort of know my idea of, because I had worked with Jerry Geronimi, who was an Uber director on Peter Pan, what he did. They said, really, it's never been outlined as far as they knew. They were thinking about writing about something, animation director for the whole movie. What do they do? And my answer was, I think that it has to do with the person who is running the show. They will all come at it differently. And they sort of, smiled and said, yes. The next thing I'm escorted over to Walt Disney's new old offices by Becky Klein from Archives, and there I am. They've done them over. Becky did them over, and they look just like they did in 1943, I think, something like that. Both offices. I got my pictures taken behind his desk, and and the two, Don Hahn and Pete Docter, are just as excited. I mean, it was wonderful. So then we finish up that, and we say goodbye. And by the way, one of them hasn't sent me the pictures. Oops, I better call him. Anyway, so we say goodbye, and it was wonderful. 3 days later, I'm watching the Oscars, and Pete Docter picks up the Academy Award for his picture, Inside Out.
Wow. That's fantastic.
How about that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 88 years old almost, and it's still, my eyebrows go up like Tink's, and I go, wow. I would be great on Antiques Roadshow because I say, wow, everything that happens.
Yeah.
So is that not a great story about? But that's the way the studio is run.
Yeah, we're only going to get to see pictures of that desk, Margaret.
Yeah, well, they said that there were 76,000 requests.
Oh, I'm sure.
To tour that, but the problem is, and so you could only take about 9 people in at a time. So it's not being, to take them right through and out, because there's so much to see, and even down to, I pointed out one thing, and I forgot what it was, and the pictures, I think, that were on the back, and Becky, the client, said that those are the pictures. We got them, the exact pictures on the back, and then telling me who they were.
Wow.
So, you can't have a large group going through like a tour of 40, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful. So I guess I'm showing off. I got to see it before most everybody.
Wow. That is fantastic. Fantastic. All right. I heard this rumor, maybe I read it somewhere, maybe on IMDb or something, that you have a great career doing voices, besides just being a reference model for TinkerBell, that you're skilled in 21 different dialects. You've done 48 various character voices, and you've been in over 600 animated shows.
Correct. And you know what started me on that career?
Wow.
I was also the red-haired mermaid in the lagoon sequence of Peter Pan.
Wow.
You remember the line, "We just wanted to drown her." That's little old me. And, "Oh, Peter, we're so happy to see you." I think that was the other one.
Right.
And I did it with a lisp, and they loved it. And June Foray, who is the voice of Rocky and Rocky Bullwinkle, and all those wonderful recordings that she did, voiceovers on everything. June and I stood out in front of the studio along with Connie Haynes, who was not Connie Haynes, Connie Hilton, outside after we had recorded, and we all looked at each other and said, "Why are we not doing this as a career? You don't put on makeup. You don't have to learn lines. If you want to change it, they just keep it rolling, and you change the character, and you work at 1:00 in the afternoon because your voice is stronger, and you leave at 3. I mean, why are we doing this in front of?" And I thought, absolutely. So that's why I went into that. And besides that, I must say, the motion pictures were getting a little bit raucous for me. I was still beautifully curved and a looker, as they say. And those were the calls that I was getting from motion to try out for different scenes. As a matter of fact, this is an aside, I was called to do a secretarial role in about 6 scenes in a major motion picture. And a man who shall remain nameless, a very famous star, he's still alive today, believe it or not. He's about 10 years older than I am. I walk in, and they said, "This is the lady or this is the actress that we want her to be your secretary." And he looked at me up and down as if I were a piece of meat and said, Yeah, but I don't think I want to sleep with her.
Wow.
And so I didn't get the role.
Wow.
So I turned to voiceover, which was great because for the longest time, that was as clean could be, you know? And so I got to do all the Clutch Cargo, the Three Stooges. I did 139 episodes with them. Charlie Weaver. Who else did I do? And there are pictures of all of them in my book. There's a whole series about it. But I worked with Hal Smith. And did you ever watch the Andy Griffith Show?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Well, I was in the Andy Griffith Show. I still travel for them. I'm doing a cruise for them in October. Excuse me. And I go up to Mayberry, or Mount Airy, Andy's hometown. And I do 6 days where we change the town into Mayberry with tribute artists, and I put on an hour show there. I have a wonderful time. Well, anyway, Hal was doing voices, and sometimes we would look across the microphone at each other, and we must have done 8 characters for one episode because we would switch over and thought nothing of it. That's what you did. And we would teach each other how to do the accents, and we would teach them right then and there how you do it. And yes, of course, and we'd go back and forth, and so I did over 600 of them for TV. Absolutely loved it. I still do it in my show. I do. Well, here's one for you. I found my family after 50 years. And again, this is a wonderful story. My baby picture that I didn't even know I had. And, but I somehow knew I was Irish because I'm such a storyteller. I love to tell stories. I'm Scots-Irish, turns out. And here's a quick story that I always told from the stage, and it turns out to be true. So Paddy is in the pub, and he's knocking them back pretty good. You got that, fellas? You understand what I'm talking about?
Sure.
No, I'm Irish. I totally understand.
Well, there you go. So these guys are talking about diversity. And one says, "Oh, I don't think I would have liked being born an Italian." And the other was, "Sure you would. All the girls would have been all around you. You'd love it. Let's go ask Paddy what he thinks." So they go over and they say, "Paddy," he says, "what is it?" He says, "What would you be if you weren't Irish?" And Paddy says, "I'd be ashamed."
That's true.
So, but I was telling that story for years, and then I found out I was Irish. And I'd be ashamed. I tell you, if I weren't anything else. So that's why I did all the voices, and I did all the... I was famous for doing baby cries.
Wow.
And witches. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite voice that you like to do? That you kind of go back to?
Well, I like Secret Agent X. Secret Agent X was in Clutch Cargo, and I was tall, and I was beautiful, and I had a patch over one eye and black lipstick. And the most fun about Secret Agent X was Clutch Cargo keeps saying, "I wonder who the mole is in our company. I wonder who the spy is." And she said, "Darling, I am over here." And he never guessed who it was. But I love Secret Agent. And the other one that I loved was June Foray. Of course, we do voices back and forth. She's moving up in years. But anyway, we still do. And as I said, she did Rocky, as I told you. But, before I forget, I left you with Hal Smith. Hal Smith was Otis Campbell, the drunk on the Andy Griffith Show. He's the one I did voices with back and forth.
Yes.
So that finishes that story. Okay, so Junie did my favorite voice for her, except the world's funniest record that she made, Dragonette, where she does, he was a dragon, and he blew fire on me. It was terrible. That was the one that she did there, but I love the one that she did in Mulan. She played the grandmother. And she's the only one who didn't have any but she had the best last line. And whenever I see her, I look at her and I said, "Okay, June, ready for it?" And she'll go, "Yeah." "Betty, you should have brought back a man." And we both collapse in laughter.
That's so funny.
I think that's one of the greatest lines she ever did.
I didn't realize she was in Mulan.
Yeah, she played the grandmother.
Yeah, wow.
That's awesome. So you've mentioned it a few times, and we would totally be remiss if we didn't ask you about your book, TinkerBell Talks, Tales of a Pixie Dusted Life. What is that about? Could you tell us about your book?
Well, it's about funny things that have happened to me in 84 years in the business. Well, even before that, because it started when I was adopted, and my wonderful, loving, annoying mother was a Hollywood mother, and all the places that we went, not knowing what we were doing or where we were going, and how I went to a girls' school and the fun things that happened. And I have written the book this way. It's 400 pages. It's 180 photos and images, some of them very rare. I've mentioned a couple that are there. There are pictures of me as TinkerBell with Tink, as out of the archives, composites kind of thing. There's a beautiful back page that Floyd Norman did for me with a drawing of TinkerBell that he did. There's Rick Law, the famous Disney artist and publisher there, that he did a special TinkerBell for me. There is a portrait of Walt Disney from a portrait studio when he was a young man. I thought it was just gorgeous. It's about my life, but my life has always been tied up in everything in entertainment industry. I produced a 7-minute animation bit for George Clinton, Funkadelic. Did you ever know about Funkadelic?
Yes.
And they came to me and said, I was working at a company, and they came to me, and Mr. Ivy said, I got to have 7 minutes. I got to have 7 minutes about the mother of all funk and all. And I'm looking at him, and I said, when do you have to have it? He said, in 10 days. And
wow.
He says, you're the only one that said, they said you could do it. And we worked around the clock on it. Well, here's the best part. In the morning, I gave it to it Friday morning, a green print. I had never even seen it. And it was at the Shrine that night, and they had 5,000 people who saw it and went crazy over it. And but I never got to see it. I was working at another product that they were doing at CBS, whatever it was. So 35 years later, right, I'm at a celebrity show, and somebody comes up to me and says, George Clinton's at that table over there. Go say hello. So I went over, and I introduced him, and I said, I'm Margaret Kerry. I'm the lady who produced your animated a 7-minute animation that you opened your show with years ago. He says, what do you mean years ago? We're still using it. I said, that was 45 years ago. They said, yeah. I said, you're kidding. He says, no. I said, you know, I've never seen it. He says, you've got to be kidding. He says, it's great. It opens up the show with a bang. And he said, here. And he took out his droid and showed me the 7 minutes. I was standing there in the aisle with the fans all standing around. That's the kind of stories that are in my book. And not one chapter is over 6 pages. And on every chapter, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right. So you can pick it up, read it, put it down, any place that you want. Right. And it's great fun. And it's The Lone Ranger, how I got to that part and worked with Clayton Moore. Wow. And the Andy Griffith Show, how I did that. And it's the kind of book that you could just enjoy and have with you. It's a little heavy. It's 400 pages. It's a 8.5 by 11. No, 8.5. Well, it's a large book. Yeah. Anyway, and the pictures are beautiful. And you see pictures of me. I bet that no one has seen with all of us as the mermaids.
Yeah. I purchased the book just recently, so I'm excited when it comes because I definitely want to definitely see all the photographs and definitely read the stories too. So I can't wait.
Well, you know what? How to get it is, and I'll let Linda know because she's working on it. No, but how to get it is you go on my website, TinkerBell Talks. See how easy it's the same, TinkerBellTalks.com. And then there's a button that you push up at the top, I think. Mm-hmm. I haven't been on it for a while. But I want you to see my website. It is gorgeous. And the reason I can say that is a fan friend of mine did it for me.
Wow.
It is so Tinkerbell. Oh, you would just love it. The spirit of her is there. I look at it and I think it's one of the most beautiful websites I've ever seen. That's how good it is.
It's a fantastic
and so you go
site.
there, TinkerBellTalks.com, and then you can order the book.
It's that easy. I did it.
I hope you do because it's lots of fun. 96% of the chapters are fun. There's about 4% that are poignant. A couple of times when I lose both of my husbands, but not bad. I mean, it's just a story. And the one about my last husband is just lovely. He was an aircraft commander of B-29s in World War II, and I met him many, many years later, and he was a widower. I met him at church, and you know what? His late wife had trained him so well that I did not have to teach him one thing. And we had a 12 and a half wonderful years. Oh, here's a story for you that isn't in the book. When Peter Pan was 45th year, they decided to do some publicity and release some new tapes. And they asked me and Catherine Beaumont to do some publicity on it. So we did. And I came home and I told Jack Wilcox was his name, and I said, Jack, we should go over and see it. It's in the movie house. And we found a movie house that had one screen left, not cut up into 14 different little things, and loges. Now the loges are back, I understand, but at that time, anyway, it was 11:30 in the morning, and I knew that I could talk out loud. There wouldn't be anybody in the theater. And I'm telling him, Jack, I remember when I did that, and that was that, and that. And Jack leans over to me and says, Margaret? I said, yes, honey, what? I'd recognize those thighs any place. Well, you could hear us laughing in the whole theater. So anyway, that's who he was. And he's part of that song you've heard, hello, young lovers, wherever you are. I've had a love like yours. It was that kind of it was a Pixie Dusted Love affair. It was wonderful. And that's in the book.
Wow. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to ask the question as we kind of start wrapping things up.
Uh-huh.
So much of TinkerBell is you. How much of you is TinkerBell?
Yes.
No. I mean, there's so much of you that you've imbibed in TinkerBell. How much of TinkerBell actually is come out of you through the years?
Well, let me answer that this way. Why is she recognized in Outer Mongolia? Why is she such an icon? I mean, that picture came out, 64, 65 years ago?
Right? 53.
And the pictures afterwards, but they never really captured in the pictures afterwards the film, except for Return to Neverland. What is it about her that people really, really love? And I think I was born with this feeling like maybe you've heard this story about the twin boys that they got as a little study, and they filled a small room with manure, and they gave shovels to the two boys, and they said, go into the different rooms and, start shoveling. And one of them said, well, I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to walk in. And the other one says, yeah, with all that manure in there, there's got to be a pony in there. And that, right? That's TinkerBell, and that's me. It's adventure ho. What is around the corner? We're not daredevils. We're just excited by life. And we're very childlike in what excites us. For example, in the unabridged Peter Pan by James M. Barrie, the first time when Peter says, Tink, Tink, where are you? And you know where she was. She was inside a jug and loving it very much. She had never seen a jug before. And that's TinkerBell. What is that? I've got to find out. Ask the next question. Who did that? Oh, yes. And I think people love that because inside of them is a little bit of that childlikeness. Might have been dampened down through life. So they enjoy that through her and through me. I mean, who in their right mind would write a 400-page book at the age of 88? But there I am. I got to see whether I can do it.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
And as my son says, I have a lot of aphorisms, two in there I want to tell you about. One of them is when I tell about, I've forgotten what the story is, but there is an actor's aphorism that says, a mantra, I should say, that says, I think, therefore I am. I have an audition, therefore I may be. And that's there. But I asked my son Eric one time, who's a comedy writer, well-known comedy writer. I said, okay, Smarty, what is life? And he looked at me, he said, life is a conflict of interests. And I thought, whoa, that's me. Right. Okay, shall I go and do that? Should I not? Oh, yeah. Oh, I think I'll go. And they see that. They hear that in me, and they hear that in TinkerBell. And that's what they love. Does that make sense? She is beguiling. Use the word about her, beguiling. We love her when she's naughty. We love her when she's nice. She's beguiling. And the press junket that they had in 300 articles, she was mentioned in 98% of those articles as beguiling.
I just found out that in 2 days it's going to be your birthday, Margaret.
Yes, it is May 11th.
Yep.
Well, and my birthday used to be November 11th, but my mother moved my birthday back 6 months, and I didn't find out until I was 15. I mean, those are the kind of stories that are in the book. It's really wacko. Wow. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So happy early birthday. And your birthday is now on the last day of Wishes here in Walt Disney World, Orlando, where TinkerBell flies off the castle. I don't know if we're going to see her after this final show on Wednesday.
Well, she's very busy. She's very busy after that, you know. She has other things to do than look after you.
That is true. That's true. They actually have said that she will be flying.
No, they're going to keep her? Okay.
I think TinkerBell is going to be around. We can't let TinkerBell go. We love her too much.
But she did have some other adventures she wanted to go on.
Right.
Oh, dear. I hope she keeps that bucket list. It's very important for her. You know the lady who slid down from the Matterhorn was 72 years old.
That's what I heard.
The contract to do. Her name is Tiny Klein, and I could almost put my hands around her waist.
Wow.
That's how tiny she was.
Wow.
And she retired at the age of 74.
Wow.
And for the first 6 weeks or 6 months, I've never gotten it straight, she slid down by holding on to her teeth. And she was going so fast, and she slammed into the mattresses at the bottom of the ride, and then she would dust herself off, put her coat on, go back, go up the 180 steps to the top, and sit there and wait to be pushed out of the window again. And then she had to be through by 11 o'clock and changed into her out of her costume because the bus that she took home stopped running after 11 o'clock. Wow. It was just the most detailed, most wonderful chanting and quaint story about Tiny Klein. And of course, she was in the circus all of her life.
Has Disney ever asked you, Margaret, would you like to fly off the Matterhorn?
Would you do it?
Would you do it?
No, no. I want an adventure, but I never want an adventure that. This is the only Earth suit that I have. I'm 88. I'm so healthy. It makes the doctor sick. And I'm still doing hour shows and tap dancing at the end of the shows. Why would I put myself in jeopardy?
I don't think anybody really wants to do a job where the last part of it means crashing into mattresses after being flung out of a mountain.
I don't think anybody wants to be in Cirque du Soleil either, but it's something in them. Rick Law's fiance, the artist's fiance, she is an aerialist with the Cirque. And I asked her why, and she said, it's wonderful. She said, you can't believe it. I'm flying. And her eyes lit up. So, it's her thing. But they couldn't get me to. I was so thrilled when Mark Davis said I didn't have to go up in the apparatus to be filmed when I was doing the reference work, because Catherine Grayson didn't like it at all, and the children didn't like it, and Roland Dupre, who was Peter Pan, and the story's in my book again. I got him the job as the reference model. He was wonderful. He called himself the guy in green tights. But anyway, they came to me because I thought I was going to have to do it in the afternoon. They said, no, we've decided, we're sorry, Margaret. You just can't, because TinkerBell doesn't fly like anybody else. TinkerBell darts. So we can't go by that. And I said, oh, shoot. Oh, I'm so sorry. With my fingers crossed behind my back. I was thrilled because you couldn't believe the apparatus they had for you to fly in. Wow. No, thank you.
Go check out, first you have to go see Margaret. She's going to be at the D23 Expo this July. The expo is July 14th to July 16th, obviously. She will be at a booth called Gifts by Small Fry, and I highly, highly recommend that you stop by and say hello to Margaret, because, as you can see, she's very entertaining, and she's a hoot to talk to. Also, go check out her website, TinkerBellTalks.com, where you can get her book, TinkerBell Talks, Tales of a Pixie Dusted Life. I just ordered mine. You should order yours. So go check her out at TinkerBellTalks.com. And as we'd like to say around here, we'll see you in the parks.
The Disney Parks Podcast is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company. All Disney parks, attractions, lands, shows, event names, etc. are registered trademarks of the Walt Disney Company.
Like a boat out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you